All right, so let's talk about stance a little bit, what I mean when I say proper stance. If any of you have taken a Muay Thai class with Coach Matt or one of the other Muay Thai coaches, you'll see them talk about stance pretty often. And the way they describe stance and the way it's described in wrestling too, is stance is kind of like your home base. So stance is a position, whereas if I'm going to throw an attack, maybe if I'm going to, like in Muay Thai sense, if I'm going to throw a leg kick or something like that, or in a wrestling sense, if I'm going to go in for a takedown, or from a defense perspective, if I'm defending against a kick or a punch, or if I'm defending against an attack, as soon as I'm done, a lot of times when you're throwing or attacking, or if you're defending, you're in kind of a vulnerable position. Maybe your alignment's not perfect, right? So you want to get back to that stance position as fast as possible, because that's a position where you're both offensive and defensive, and you could set up your offense and your defensive at the same time. So in a wrestling perspective, first off, in a wrestling perspective, you always want to be low. So as an adage, we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we talk about the defense, but if my head is lower than my opponent's head, they can't get to my legs. They can't attack my legs. So in wrestling defense, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to look down, right? This is opening me up for snap downs and some other offensive tactics, especially from the jiu-jitsu sense. You know, this is just asking to get guillotined. So what I want to do in my stance is I want to lower my base, right? I want my knees lowered, and I want my head up at all times. I want my back to be straight. I don't necessarily want to be hunched like this. I want my hands low, right? My hands are going to be typically defending these leg attacks, especially my lead leg. We'll talk about that briefly. My hands are going to be low. I'm going to be in a good base, right? And I'm going to be starting from here. From here, I'm going to be moving around a little bit. I'm on my toes. I'm light on my feet. I'm able to switch my legs pretty fast, right? Some differences between like a traditional Muay Thai stance and a wrestling stance are in a Muay Thai stance, typically a right-handed person is going to be leading with their left leg. In a wrestling sense, typically a right-handed person leads with their right leg. There's reasons for that we could get into a little bit later. There's also, just like any other, just like any sport, a lot of the top level guys have slightly different fundamentals. Wrestling is no different. And what I mean by these slightly different fundamentals when it comes to stance is how they move in and out of that stance and how the stance looks. So some guys are a little bit more square, right? So notice both of my legs are square here. I'm just in a really tough dominant position, like little bull leg guys, like Billy, for instance. He might be more of a square stance person, just kind of impenetrable. Whereas some guys have one leg forward. So again, right leg lead person might have a right leg lead, or a right-handed person might have a right leg lead. Right leg lead, I'm going to be in this position here, right? So my right leg's leading. Reason why is I'm stepping with this foot to attack. This is my leading foot. Some people, me for instance, I used to switch a lot between. I would move around in my stance, and I would go from a left leg lead to a right leg lead, being pretty comfortable with that. But notice my head's up, good base, and level change.